Hello and welcome to the match preview on the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm Andrew Musgrove and as usual joined by John Gibson. Newcastle United travelled down to Merseyside this week. A Thursday night game at Goodison Park against Everton. It's going to be a very interesting one given that one side are rubbish at home and the other side are rubbish on the road. And we'll talk about those records in a moment, but we can't start the podcast without just quickly reflecting on what happened at the weekend, John, as Newcastle United beat Manchester United 1-0 and weren't the Red Devils a wee bit lucky that it wasn't by a scoreline, something reflecting a cricket score?
Oh, I mean, they got humiliated 1-0. It was a 1-0 avalanche. It was a typical example of a team that cares against a team that doesn't. Because everything Newcastle have got, apart from natural ability and sound coaching, I'm talking about the will, the desire, the camaraderie, the team spirit. Manchester United don't, in spades. I mean, you've got to, if you just look at the way the two guys on each tram line, on one side you've got Trippier and Almiron, and on the other side Livramento and Gordon. If you look at those guys and then compare them to people like Rashford and people like Martial, huge names, but just don't give a damn. They didn't track back. They didn't do any of the dirty work. It's as though it's beneath them. And you've got to think that this is a reflection of what's going on in the dressing room of players v manager. Because all of a sudden, if you get a change of manager, you suddenly see Rashford running up and down like a Lindy. It changes the situation. It's wrong. But I mean, I look at Den Hag and he looks out his depth. He literally looks like a rabbit in the headlights. What do I do next? Obviously, they're not listening to him. He's part of the problem himself because he's created divisions in the dressing room, whereas Eddie Howe's created a wonderful togetherness. I mean, he falls out with top names, he splits the dressing room. In that respect, he reminds me very much of Gordon Lee, way before your time, Andrew, but was Newcastle manager when Supermac and Terry Hibbert and people like this were playing. I mean, he got results to a certain extent. Ten Hag did last season, but he split the dressing room. In long term, that is a recipe for disaster. And the reason Newcastle are defying all the logic that's going with an injury and a missing list of up to 14 and another now with Nick Pope is because of this togetherness that overcomes all adversary. It's quite amazing to see and to watch because and Manchester United beat everybody at the bottom but lose to everybody at the top, and that's continued. And well done, Newcastle. I thought they were magnificent.
They were absolutely brilliant. The most dominating 1-0 victory I've ever seen, especially at St James's Park. And just to finish off, reflecting on that result, Ten Hag has banned a few newspapers from his press conference today, or whether Manchester United have. I don't know if Ten Hag has personally done it, but I have a feeling he may have said a word or two to the person handing down the bans, and that includes our sister paper down in Manchester, the Manchester Evening News. And what I've taken away from that, John, isn't it just nice to not have Newcastle United being the circus? You know, we were
Absolutely.
used to it under Mike Ashley. It was always one drama after another. And here we are, Newcastle United, with a quality manager, a team fighting for each other, owners who don't really get too much involved. They leave the running to the football club to more experienced people. We know, ladies and gents, the survey has come out and that has angered a few people, and we'll talk separately about that later on. But as a whole, Newcastle United aren't the circus anymore, and it's a great feeling.
It's a wonderful feeling because we had that for so long. I mean, you talk about people getting banned. It's almost a badge of honor to get banned in bad times because it means you're telling it the way it is. And I mean, I suffered from that for over a year at Newcastle at one stage under Mike Ashley. And okay, so be it. You can't just go along with it because you might ruffle a few feathers. But Manchester United, both at owner level and in the manager's office, are so far behind. I mean, they're only a big club because their history is a big club. They're acting very small and very timid, and things will have to change before the change, if you know what I mean. But that's their problem, they're the disunited, and we are literally united. And that is wonderful because it's so unusual at Newcastle over modern times, all for one and one for all. And that is one of the main reasons why we're defying everything we're defying at the moment and producing results. The camaraderie is absolutely massive and is driving us on, to beat Chelsea, to beat Manchester United, to effectively beat Paris Saint-Germain until last minute intervention. It's wonderful. You keep pinching yourself and saying, how long can it go on? Because you get 14 out or something, and then Nick Pope goes, the flipping goalkeeper, making an innocuous stop, does his shoulder and could be out for 4 to 5 months. I mean, what's going on? I appealed on our last podcast to say if anybody knows where Lady Luck's hiding, can they drag her out so we can have a look at her and she can smile on us again? Far from smiling on us, she produced another Vammy, which was Nick Pope. It's quite incredible, yet the odds are defied. And yet we stand and we're so amazed that we keep saying, as we did against Manchester United, oh, we'll beat Manchester United, despite it. And no doubt we feel the same still now with yet another one added with Nick Pope. It's quite incredible. But it speaks volumes for what has been manufactured in-house at St James's Park.
It certainly does. Let's talk about that injury to Nick Pope then. Horrendous look, just dives. And as I said on yesterday's podcast with Aaron, he'd probably make that dive 100 times and never get the same result. And it has damaged his shoulder, which kept him out for quite a while back in 2018-19. So that in itself is a massive worry. Eddie Howe's going to, get the reports, see a specialist about it, etc., etc. But the bottom line is he's going to be out for quite a while. Talk yesterday, John, about David De Gea coming in, but look, I'm not a big fan of that idea. I would give Martin Dubravka the opportunity. He's going to get the opportunity, you would think, anyway, because it's 5-6 games until the January window opens. I know De Gea's on a free transfer anyway, but I still think he'll get given enough time to make that number one shirt, which he actually wears anyway, his own.
Yes. Absolutely, he'll get the time because, I mean, if De Gea is brought in by anybody, yes, he can be brought in tomorrow because he's a free agent, but he's not going to be up to par, is he? He hasn't played for 6 months or something like that. You can't just throw him straight in. Any club taking him straight in the side and expect miracles. And Dubravka has earned the right to go in, and he'll get it. For goodness sake, we've got a game Thursday, we've got a game Sunday, we've got a game next Wednesday, and then the following weekend. We're not going to have anybody new in for then, even if we wanted to, and even if it was De Gea signing tomorrow, you wouldn't be ready to play. Dubravka is. And Dubravka in the old days, in the dark old days, did us proud for an awful long time and kept us afloat from relegations. And we've got to remember, not so long ago, was voted the North East Player of the Year when he was keeping goal for Newcastle. So he's earned the right to have that step up. Yes, goalkeepers can make mistakes. You can point to things that he didn't do well just before he went out the side. You can point to the fact he looked a bit iffy very early on at Manchester United in the League Cup tie. But there again, you can pick matches out where Nick Pope hasn't done well. In fact, until he was superb in the last match, he'd had a little bit of a dip. Goalkeepers do that because a mistake is highlighted, because it normally ends up with a ball in the net, whereas a centre-half can make a mistake and the goalkeeper can pull him out. But Dubravka's earned that right. There's absolutely no question. And he will get that opportunity, and I'm pleased for him.
I mean, look, there's no getting away from the fact Nick Pope is a better goalkeeper than Martin Dubravka. He's proved that for me. He's the best shot stopper in the Premier League. But what gives me a little bit of confidence, Martin Dubravka's ability aside, is the fact that Eddie Howe doesn't allow any passengers at Newcastle United. So we know, all being well, Martin Dubravka would probably appear in the Cup, and that would probably be it. That is probably at the most. If Nick Pope was fit throughout, it would be the Cups at best for Martin Dubravka. but he has to train every single day. And Eddie Howe sets the standard. The same with Luis Carrias and the same with Mark Gillespie. You know, the standards are set so high that when they are called in for an injury, you expect them to reach the standards Eddie Howe has set. And I fully expect Martin Dubravka to be able to do that.
Yeah, so do I. I'm not certain minded I would want to go down to Carriers and beyond that to Gillespie, because I think the standard would be dropping considerably from Pope to Gillespie. But we're not doing that. We're talking about a guy who's still a current international, Dubravka, for his country, and has played an awful lot of games for Newcastle United. And therefore, no. Yes, you can say the Pope was an upgrade, but there again, Botman was an upgrade on Lascelles, but Lascelles hasn't let Newcastle down when he's come back into the side. And I just hope that Dubravka looks at Lascelles, who played in front of him for all those times in the dark days under Ashley, and just looks at Jamal and says, look at what he's done in coming back into the side. I can do that as well, and reaches the consistency that Lascelles has played. I mean, I'm not blinded. I still think Botman's is better centre half than Lascelles, but Lascelles has done brilliantly when he's come in recently, and it's up to Dubravka to look at him and say, yeah, I can do what he's done.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the point I'm making. You look at Jacob Murphy turning his Newcastle United career around, Jamal Lascelles, as you mentioned. I think they're the standards you hope Martin Dubravka will have to hit. And Newcastle have proven in recent weeks and recent months, with the injuries they've suffered, that the players who come in, they fill in and they perform really well. And it is something of a scratch your head scenario when we're talking about Jamal Lascelles, playing the best football of his career, when he looked like he would never get another game for Newcastle United last summer. It's tremendous to see, and just the fact, as you say, he stepped up. Jacob Murphy stepped up. There's other players who've stepped up and performed out their skin when called upon. Martin Dubravka is going to do that. But I just want to ask you, John, whether losing Nick Pope, how do you think it will impact the dressing room, because you're losing such a big character who's been such a constant fixture in the team?
It's very tempting to say it will, but I mean, we have lost so many senior players out of the dressing room for a long period of time recently that you think another one, he's still going to be there putting his input Monday to Friday, talking to players, doing etc., etc. But you've got to think that why would yet another one make any difference when it hasn't so far? So no, I don't think it will. It's a specialist position. He's out for 4 or 5 months, possibly. That is an awful long time. Can we go that long without bringing another season pro? Because I think beneath Dubravka now, there is a class gap. Carriers was only brought in at the last minute last season for the League Cup final, did nothing wrong in that game. Wasn't a world beater, but did nothing wrong. Gillespie's just got a contract to be the fourth keeper. He's not looked upon to be anything other than that. So, I would hate to be looking at those two. Will they bring in experience to go with Dubravka if it's confirmed that it's 4 or 5 months for Pope? I think they possibly will, because I think that could be necessary. But in the meantime, fine. And even if I brought somebody in tomorrow, I'd still want Dubravka to play.
Would it be a short-term deal, do you think, John? Would it be a David De Gea type, someone who's a free agent? Would it be looking to get a cheeky little loan somewhere until the summer? Or do you think Newcastle potentially might move their transfer plans ahead a summer or two and go, okay, look, if Nick Pope's picked up this injury, maybe we now go out and sign, £30 million Aaron Ramsdale, for instance. I'm just throwing that number out there. I don't actually think that's an upgrade on Nick Pope, but we know he's been linked. We know, we've got to be honest, 2 summer transfer windows down the line, you would think that'll be about the time, if Nick Pope remains fit, that Newcastle might look to bring someone in and improve the goalkeeping department, someone who's maybe better with their feet. What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, there's an upgrade for everybody. Manchester City upgrade, and they've won 5 out of 6 league titles, but they upgrade regularly, and they've got Doka, the winger, who's an upgrade on Grealish, and you think that you've got the number one guy, but there's always somebody that much better. I mean, you would probably get an upgrade on Nick Pope, where you would get somebody who's as good with his feet as Allison is or Edison, or which Nick isn't. And so there's always an upgrade, and Newcastle could take this opportunity to say, well, we'll get an upgrade on Pope and let the two of them fight it out. But I mean, the obvious answer is to go short term with a quality keeper that'll keep them afloat for the rest of the season, because you've really got to look at the rest of the season now, and it's a risk. I mean, it's a bit of a blow, Andrew, because we're not certain we're going to get everybody we want. I mean, it's a bit of a blow to switch your target in January, because January is not a month where you bring in half a dozen. And do we desperately need a centre forward? Are we still interested in the right-sided centre half? Do we need another goalkeeper? The list getting. And if we need a keeper, are we going to sacrifice a centre forward for a keeper? I would hope not. But there's big decisions to be taken. But I've got a feeling that Newcastle, as the weeks go on, might feel uncomfortable to go with just Dubravka, because I don't think the other two guys, and I'm paying utmost respect to them, and they both got an extra year on their contract, but they got an extra year to sit as number 3 and number 4 choice, not to suddenly play quite regularly. So we are thin there now, and something should be done and probably will be done. But I'm emphasising that Dubravka is the man in possession, and I'm happy with that. But if you look beyond that, you're a bit thin.
Yeah, I
And
share your
what
concerns there.
we don't want, Andrew, what we don't want is a situation which is developed with West centre forward, where we haven't had, we're saying we don't need cover because we've got Isaac and Wilson, who are two international centre forwards, so we're fine. The only trouble is Wilson's never fit, and Isaac has some problems. So all of a sudden, we with hindsight, we needed a third striker. And with hindsight, we don't want to say we need a keeper when Karius is playing and Gillespie's on the bench.
Yeah, hopefully they've learned the lesson from that. It's going to be interesting to see what they do in January. If you guys watch and listen, and let us know on social media. Let us know in the comments what you would do with regard to that goalkeeping situation. Would you sign someone short term, or would you move the plans forward and maybe go and sign a direct number 1 to rival Nick Pope? Shall we talk about some football then, John? Everton, the opposition on Thursday. We know they've got their off the field issues, being deducted 10 points, isn't it, for breaking the FFP rules, which ironically shows you why Newcastle United are being so careful with it, because they don't want to have that coming down the track later on, as Man City are starting to maybe worry a little bit. I want to talk though about the impact that's had on Everton's form. They were battered by Manchester United, but they went and they beat Nottingham Forest. It seems to have worked. I think Sean Dyche said after the Nottingham Forest game, it's galvanised them. It's pulled them all together. It's united them. So are you expecting a different challenge on Thursday than maybe Newcastle would have faced 5-6 weeks ago? Do you think?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's creating a siege mentality is a wonderful thing. I mean, Alex Ferguson did it for donkey's years at Manchester United, and they kept winning the titles as a consequence. Everybody's against us. Eddie Howe has spoken recently of liking that within the Newcastle United dressing room. He said if the players want to take it, that the whole world's against us and everything, I'm quite happy if it's going to help them, in that mental attitude and the physical output. That is a tremendous thing. And that is something that Dyche will be playing on. Look, the whole world's against us. The Premier League's against us. Everybody's laughing. Nobody cares if we go down, but we'll show them we are better than this. We'll take on the world. And he'll be trying to get that link between the fans on the terraces and the players, that we are all in this together. Let's go out and get the points. Now, they've got to turn I know that the hatred initially of the Everton fans was against the Premier League for what they've done with it. But you can't go out on Thursday night and take it out on the Premier League, because the Premier League don't give you 3 points, they take 10 points off you. So they won't give you the 3 points. They've got to unite on the terraces and on the field against Newcastle. Because if they don't, then they don't get the 3 points. It's no good having to go at the Premier League and just clapping Newcastle. They've got to take it out on Newcastle, or attempt to. And therefore, they will have this. I mean, the home record, you mentioned it at the beginning, is absolutely frightening. 1-1, drawn 1, lost 5. Lost 5 out of 7 at home, and yet they've got 4 wins on the road. I mean, it is quite. And our away record's hopeless compared with last season. 1 win, 2 draws, 3 defeats. When last season we only had 3 defeats a whole season to get us 4th, and we've got 7 wins out of 8 at home. So both are playing the wrong way around. We're both playing to right a wrong. We've got to right our away record, and we've got a fabulous opportunity, because we've got 2 away games in 3 days against Everton for the Spurs to put it right. And Everton have got to get pretty quick. If they're going to stay up, that home record's got to change, and change dramatically. And I think they probably will stay up when you look at what else there is in the league. But they will try to get the camaraderie that Newcastle have got. And it's very difficult. They've got inferior players. That is obvious by a country mile. We are right up at the top, and they're right down at the bottom. I mean, even with the points deductions, there's a huge gap in ability. But, rolling the sleeves up and getting stuck in and being well organised can paper over a lot of cracks. And that's what they'll attempt to do on Thursday night.
They certainly will. And I can't quite work out how this one's going to go, because usually in this position, as our listeners know, I always like to say it's going to be a great game for the neutral. But I'm not too sure about this one, because, as you mentioned, the away form is terrible for Newcastle. The home form is terrible for Everton. They're just going to cancel each other out, and it's just going to be a drab 0-0, right?
Well, it could well be. I mean, I don't think it'll be wonderful for the neutral, that's for certain, because Everton won't be going out to make it wonderful. They'll be going out to make it ugly, to make it scrappy, to sort Newcastle out, to pull Newcastle down to their level, and then sneak a 1-0. That's the way they'll play it. And I think it'll be a fearful game as much as a game of lavish open football. And Newcastle know only one way to play, but they want to put the record straight from their away record straight. This is possibly the opportunity to get 3 points out of the 2 away games they've got. Spurs recovered somewhat with a draw at Man City. They could be a little bit tougher at Spurs, but we've got to get some points out of these 2 away games. There's no question at all about that. But I don't think it's going to be a fun feast, either of goals or of entertaining football, because I think Everton will make it ugly deliberately, because that's their best chance of getting some. If they want to go toe-to-toe with Newcastle and punch for punch and flamboyance against flamboyance, they'll get slaughtered, man. So they'll not attempt to do that.
So we're going to expect Newcastle to have a lot of the ball, but to be fair, they look quite comfortable doing that. We've seen it in recent games. We saw it against Chelsea and against Manchester United to a certain degree, especially in the first half. They had to take the game to the opposition, because the opposition were comfortable sitting back and inviting Newcastle United on. The issue is, if you're the opposition, Newcastle will punish you. They will go for you, and they're creating more chances now. They're looking more comfortable playing the long game, passing it, left, right, and then that killer pass, and against Manchester United and Chelsea, really, I mean, the killer passes came down the flanks, and that's going to be another really interesting battle on Thursday to see how Everton's fullbacks can handle. We expect it to be Kieran Trippier, Almiron on one side, and Livramento and Gordon on the other side.
I mean, have you seen? I don't want to tempt fate, but have you seen more quality from our fullback positions than Trippier and Livramento? You've got to go back an awful long time to have seen better quality, both going forward and defensively, than they've produced. I mean, it is quite stunning. It's quite stunning because Trippier's 33 or whatever he is, on the wrong side of the hill in terms of age, and is playing like a young buck, and has so much fitness and so much endeavour about him. And Livramento is just a Rolls Royce. He's 21, a kid. the exact opposite of Trippier, and he's playing on his wrong side. He prefers the right side, but he's as comfortable as it's possible to be at left back. And they are just two quality players. And we're saying quite rightly that Newcastle's threat is down the two wide positions on the tram lines with the link up between the fullbacks and the wide player. What we do know is that Gordon will get actual dog's abuse at on Thursday night because he was seen to be a traitor, etc., etc. They forced his transfer out of Everton when he come to Newcastle. The fans chased him down the street when he went for his car after a game, etc., etc. He's going to get dog's abuse. But again, he's as spiky as a porcupine, is Gordon. I mean, fans of the opposite side dislike him hugely. Our fans dislike Gordon hugely when he played for Everton. They love him now because he is spiky and he does rattle opposition fans and irritate them. And by Jove, he'll be given some stick at Everton. But I think he'll get some hammer physically. He'll roll. He'll give it a couple of forward rolls on the deck. He'll get up and he'll just run at them again. I don't think the crowd will be able to intimidate him and take him out the game that way for one moment. But he's going to get dog's abuse and he knows it completely.
Yeah, he's going to get a very harsh welcome at Goodison Park. Great to see him get that goal against Manchester United, and he's adding goals to his game, which Eddie Howe admits that was probably the one thing he was lacking. But he's not 100% confirmed for Thursday, and we will find out hopefully a bit more on Wednesday in Eddie Howe's press conference. But Gordon left the pitch with a bit of tightness in his hip. That's what Eddie Howe said to the press after the game against Manchester United. He said, fingers crossed, it's nothing too serious. I think in normal circumstances, John, you wouldn't be that worried. But given the run of games coming up, the importance of these games as well. I mean, the game against Spurs and then Milan. I mean, the Milan games are massive. I think you're concerned a little bit more. You're concerned a little bit more because he is your informed player. I mean, look, and sorry, the other point is who would replace him if he was indeed injured? That's the main issue.
The way things are, Andrew, the most important game's the next one. Because you can't plan. You can shuffle packs if you've got all the 14 players that have been out for Newcastle. If they were all available, you can look ahead and say, right, we'll keep him for Milan because we've got Murphy, because we've got Barnes, because we've got Tonali, because we've got Longstaff. You can shuffle. There's no pack to shuffle. There's no pack to shuffle here outside of suddenly playing Hall or taking a chance on Dummett Craft somewhere around the back, or suddenly plucking somebody out the air that's unfit, but suddenly is miraculously enough to give you 20 minutes. You can't make any changes. So, the most important game now for Eddie is Everton. As important as Milan is, and by Jove, our whole future in the Champions League depends on that. That's 3 games away. We cannot look at that now. Right now, we've got to just look at Everton.
3 games away, but only 8 days away. It's mental, isn't it? Just how tight the games are coming in.
Absolutely.
But we're sitting here, John, saying he's not 100% confirmed. We'll find out more in the press conference. But I imagine Anthony Gordon will be doing absolutely everything he can to be in that team on Thursday.
Oh, yeah. As I said, he'll take dog's abuse, but he knows that, and he'll be quite happy to do that because he is a spiky character, and that won't faze him whatsoever. And by the way, as you know and I know, we won't find out anything on Thursday because at the press conference, we'll find out an hour before the kickoff when the team sheet comes out because Eddie is as cute as a box of monkeys, and he won't give anything away, especially to Everton, knowing who's going to play. So we'll get the usual. It might be touch and go. We'll have a look at him again in training tomorrow, and we'll make a late decision, and that will be on everybody. He'll concentrate his press conference, I think, on bigging up Dubravka. I think that will be what Eddie will use his press conference for, is saying how much faith they've got in Dubravka, what a good goalkeeper he is, what a good attitude he's had sitting on the bench, and how he has got all the experience in the world and do a job for us. I think that'll be the message that he'll hammer home repeatedly, and he'll mention in passing the injury situation, but in passing.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, as we look around to the rest of the team, John, you would imagine it's going to be the same team that has played against PSG and the same team that started against Manchester United. Again, hasn't really got the options to switch it up.
And
It's a team
Chelsea,
that's performing really well. And yeah, and Chelsea. Yeah. And I think, you know, I mean, I keep mentioning this every week, but just their fitness just continues to blow my mind. There's no way that these players should be starting these games, you know, eh, one after the other and performing at the level they are. But you know that whatever team he puts out on Thursday, and as we say, we expect it to be the same team. They'll start the game like a house on fire. They'll come out of those out the cages, out the traps like that, and hopefully, get an early goal. And just that early goal will be key. But just talk to us about the fitness, John, the fitness of the side.
well, it's quite phenomenal. You can't believe it, can you? They defy all logic, game after game after game, and we're restricted. Not just we say, oh, it'll be the same team. It'll be the same team because there isn't an option, but also there's not an option during the game off the bench. I mean, he makes a little change at the end. Richie comes on for 5 minutes or whatever, but he hasn't got the facility to bring Isaac off and or someone else during the game because he's got no one to actually put on. So the fitness is phenomenal. We're grasping at any little bit of straw that flies past in the breeze, and from that point of view, the harder game might be Spurs, and I'm not talking about the opposition. I'm talking about the time factor, because at least we've had a rest of sorts from Manchester United through to a Thursday, not playing on a Wednesday. But all of a sudden, Thursday down there, you come home, it's Friday morning, you're playing Sunday. The tougher, tighter turnaround is going to be between Everton and Spurs. So we keep saying, can they go back to the well? And they keep answering it, and the answer is yes. And long may it continue. Though each time it does, you think you're getting closer to the time when enough. And we did it, didn't we? I mean, we tend to forget. But Newcastle at Bournemouth, we knew within 3 minutes of the kickoff that was a foregone conclusion, that was a lost cause because we were really shattered. Now, we don't lose to Bournemouth under normal circumstances. And Everton is a bit of a game like Bournemouth, isn't it, to a certain extent? They're down the bottom, etc. Now, we don't lose to Bournemouth under normal circumstances, but they weren't normal circumstances. So we've got to guard again to make certain that Everton isn't a Bournemouth banana skin. But I mean, we all knew at Bournemouth within 5 minutes of the kickoff how flat Newcastle were from number 2 to number 11. Right across the park, they were flat and they were exhausted, and we understood why. Since, because they got a fortnight's break after that because of the international break, and they've kept charging again. But you keep thinking, oh, please don't give us another Bournemouth, because we could understand it, but we need it like a hole in the head. And so that is the fear in the back of our minds. But we know within 10 minutes of kickoff, we knew within 10 minutes of kickoff at Manchester United that this was the real Newcastle. And we knew within 10 minutes of Bournemouth, this wasn't the real Newcastle.
Yeah, and I just wonder that if the away factor comes into that again. Like we said at the start of the show, that the away form is dire for Newcastle. And anyhow, spoke about it after the Man United game and said it has to improve. He knows it has to improve. Newcastle are going to get back into the top four, and hopefully it starts with a win against Everton. I mentioned there just before, John, about getting that early goal and just to get the nerves going of the Everton fans. I mean, that's going to be absolutely crucial, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, because that'll be like taking a pin to a balloon if we get that early goal, because that's what Manchester United did, if you remember. They get an early goal, and it's the fabulous overhead kick that pricked the balloon. And if we did that again early on, it doesn't have to be fabulous. It just has to be a tap in. If we score in the first 10 minutes, then it will be like taking a pin to a balloon for them, and it will give us a bit of breathing space. That would be the perfect answer. Equally, we don't want to concede one that way, because that would have put the tails up of both them and the crowd, wouldn't it? I think it's going to be a more taut match, a bit of a negative match because, as I say, Everton's best chance is to make it that. You get no points for being pretty. So Everton aren't going to try to be. Also, if you're pretty against Newcastle, you'll lose because Everton haven't got enough players. So it's going to be a bit of a trial and tribulation evening. But, by all that's saying, Newcastle should win.
They should win, and I will get your score prediction in a moment. One man who is touch and go for Everton is Dominic Calvert-Lewin, constantly linked to Newcastle United as a potential replacement for Wilson or Isak. And look, there's no arguing that if he's fit, he's one of the best strikers in the Premier League, but he's got an even worse record than both of them strikers. So I just want to put that one straight to bed. Let's not sign Calvert-Lewin because we'll be going around the houses about the injury excuses, even more so than we do with Wilson and Isak.
Yeah, we need a third striker because Wilson is habitually injured. And we get another one who's habitually injured and who's in England international and who on his day is great, but he doesn't have enough days. It's the same identical picture as Wilson. You don't want another one of those. He is the last guy on a free transfer, for goodness sake, if he was on a free, and he isn't, of course. But you just don't. They need another striker because they've got a Callum Wilson. So, that is just a joke. That is not the answer to the current problem at all.
So when you see price tags of 35, 40 million being bandied about, what are you thinking?
Well, it's a joke. I'm thinking, who's decided on this? Is this April Fool's Day? It is an absolute nonsense. I wouldn't take him on a free transfer. Not because of ability, but because of his fitness record. We need somebody that stays fit. And Isak hasn't got the greatest fitness record, but he's better than Wilson. But we need somebody that's fit.
Well, we're going to go off on a tangent, but I just want to ask you, I'll just continue on that line of subject. Yeah. Ivan Toney, would you pay 40 million for Ivan Toney?
Ooh. A lot of his goals, when you look at it, he has a decent goals record. A lot of them are penalties, which he never misses. And I think he missed one against us, didn't he? But he doesn't normally miss them. It wouldn't bother me that we give him away. Bringing somebody back we give away, it doesn't bother me one iota. We brought Peter Beardsley back, and what a player he was. That doesn't make any difference. But Peter wasn't thrown out, of course, like Ivan Toney was. I don't know, because I don't think that's going to happen. It's going to be intriguing what the centre forward is we've got, Andrew. Are you going to go and pay between 40 or 60 million for which is the going rate for a centre forward minimum if you want a guaranteed goal man? Or are you going to say we're going to buy somebody that's young and bright and full of potential that will get slightly cheaper, like the boy we were going to get from France that went to Paris Saint-Germain instead, and go down that route where he would fit in more financially to what we're looking at? You go down the other route and the guy's going to say before he signs, you buy Ivan Toney, before he signs, you say, by the way, I am your number one, aren't I? I start before Wilson and Isak, even if they're both fit, because otherwise I'm not coming. I'm not coming to sit three. So there is a lot of ifs and buts.
As our listeners know, I would definitely go out and sign a £40 million striker. Everyone was available. Maybe not Ivan Toney because of the ban he's had, and how quick is he going to get up to scratch? Not a January signing anyway. I think that's more maybe a summer signing once he's back and he's proven he can still.
I honestly think, Andrew, that he wants to leave because he thinks he's better than Brentford, but he also thinks that he owes some loyalty to Brentford for the way they've been during this ban. So I think he will, in an ideal world, he wants to play out the season, get his fitness back, start scoring goals again, and get a big transfer in the summer.
Anyway, that's a topic for another podcast many months down the line. We talked about how Newcastle should win this one, John. If they've got aspirations to get back into the top four, which clearly they have, and they're going not too badly at the moment in the league. I've got the actual form table here, so let me just read you off some stats, and then let's remember the injuries that Newcastle United have had. So the last 10 games, Newcastle United have picked up 23 points. That puts them top of the form table. Scored 25, conceded 11. Now Everton are 8th in that, 16 points from the last 30, but they have lost 3 in that run. The last 6 games, Newcastle are third in the form table, 13 points. Everton are ninth with 10. Everton, as we said, just picked up 4 points on the road. The league table that matters, Everton are what? 18th on 7 points, I think it is, after the point deduction. Newcastle are 6th and trying to chase down those above them. If Newcastle United are going to do that and are going to finish in the top 4, top 5, John, injuries aside, yes, it impacts you. Yes, you're away from home, but you've got to be beating this Everton side, haven't you?
Yes, you have. Yeah, I mean, if Newcastle are going to make the impact at the top, and if they're going to make the impact they deserve, because they've been defying a horrendous injury list, if they're going to do that, you beat Everton and then at least get a draw at Spurs. You don't lose either game because we are 6th, and because our away record shows 1 win in 6 matches, and that's got to improve. So you beat Everton and you get at least a draw at Spurs, and
I'd take that.
you don't actually lose either of them. If we are going to make up the ground that we deserve to make up, there's no question about that. We deserve to make it up, but you don't lose to Everton. But that was my fear against Bournemouth. You don't lose to Bournemouth. But we did, and there's only one reason why we did. If we played them again now, we would slaughter them. It was one game too far before we got the break we needed, which was the international break for a fortnight. And if we're not careful or we don't get some people back shortly, we're going to hit a Bournemouth sometime down the line in the next before Christmas. So we need to get people back quickly.
We do indeed, because there's no break for Newcastle United, is there? So it's going to be an interesting run up to Christmas and in the new year. Before I get your score prediction, John, I can't let you go without talking about the Tyne-Wear Derby returning. Come on, how excited are you?
Well pleased. Well pleased, because we owe them. We owe them big time. Because before the derbies were knocked on the head, when Sunderland went on the slippery slope down through the Championship into League One and trying to fight their way back up, we had lost 6 out of 7, and we haven't won in the last 9 derbies. We haven't won in the last 9 derbies. But what we've got to remember is all those were under Mike Ashley. And this is a different old ball game now to what it was then. And we owe them one big time. It's a fascinating cup tie. All things are equal, there's only one winner in it. And I know they'll be looking for a honeymoon period and their new manager, having got rid of Tony Mowbray this week. But I don't know that that's going to help their cause, because I think he did terrific for them under very limited circumstances, because he's good with kids. And that's all he's got. But he fell out big time with the management's, the owner's idea of recruitment, which is buy kids, improve them and sell them on to profit, which is not the way a manager wants to do life, because he wants a bit of experience in there to go for promotion. That is, and quite a few people in football have mentioned to me for a while now that is the problem with Sunderland. The way the board see the club going is not the way a manager would see the club going, and that's been the situation with Tony Mowbray. But yes, it's going to be a fabulous way. What we've got to do is we've got to make Eddie's cute. Eddie knows the score, but we've got to make certain. Let Graham Jones or somebody tell him who's a Geordie, or let Paul Dummett tell him, or whoever we want. But be careful of the team you put out, my son, down there, because getting beat by the Mackhams in the cup will not go down well with Newcastle fans, for all the kudos and the standing that you have within the club. That would be taken very badly. We've gone out under Eddie, and there's reasons for it. We've gone out at the first hurdle at home to Cambridge United, because quite frankly then all that mattered was the relegation fight we were in. And then last season we went out at Sheffield Wednesday at the first time of asking. And that was accepted because we were on our way to Wembley in the League Cup final. But right now, we have got to not go out at the first hurdle, not to this opposition. And Eddie, I know you put out a virtual reserve side of Manchester United in the League Cup and we won 3-0. So you can, apart from the keeper, you change the 10 outfield players. And you'll think we can do that again and we'll be all right. You know what? In this world, if you do it again, you've got to be all right. Because if you lose that game, there will be mumblings on the terraces. I'm not suggesting for 1 second anybody would want Eddie to go anything ludicrous like that. But please, Eddie, help yourself as well as help us. Put a decent team out and let us go and do the job down there.
Well, I don't think there's any fear of that. I think he'll be putting his strongest team out possible. You see all the big guns because he's not going to want to lose it at a time we died. But it's interesting, John. Last point on this. You mentioned there the League Cup final. And I think it's fair to say in the build up to that, it became a distraction. I think certain players' minds wandered towards the big day at Wembley.
Yeah.
And look, don't jump on me back, you guys listening and watching. I'm not saying this is a cup final for Newcastle. It's not. It's just another Saturday or Sunday, It is the time we're Derby. They're not going to want to lose. My point being is, though, we can't allow, Eddie Howe can't allow it. The captain, Jamal Lascelles, Kieran Trippier can't allow the time we're Derby in a month's time to become a distraction because there's so many games in between then. And if you allow your mind to wander about, will I play? How is it going to be? The atmosphere, it's going to be fierce. We've got to win this game. If you're starting to think about this now, to me, that's a little bit dangerous.
Oh, it's very dangerous, but I don't think for 1 second they will, because it's only the third round of the cup, and you're playing a championship side. And if you're Bruno, and if you're Gordon, and if you're Almiron, you know vaguely what the derby means. You've never played in them because you weren't probably here the last time you played in the derby, or most of the players weren't. But it's not. I mean, Wembley's a distraction, for goodness sake. But a third round cup tie, it doesn't matter who you play, is not a distraction. You're not thinking ahead to that. I mean, you're more likely to be thinking ahead to AC Milan next Wednesday than you are to playing a championship side away in the third round of the FA Cup, albeit our hated neighbours. I don't think for 1 second that will prey on anybody's mind. The big thing will be to make certain that when they go there, they adopt the Newcastle United attitude. And not just think, oh, we're playing a championship side. We'll go out there and an hour and a half later, we'll come back into the dressing room and we're through because we're playing a championship side. It won't be like that because it happens to be Sunderland. But I don't think it'll prey on anybody's mind or get in the way. I mean, a Wembley final was a different ballgame. Newcastle don't make Wembley finals, cup finals. And certainly if they do make them, they don't win them anymore. So that did play hugely on everybody's mind. I don't think Sunderland will.
Well, I was going to say, some might say Newcastle United don't win time weird derbies. I mean, largely due to the fact that Sunderland, like you say, slipped down the leagues and they couldn't be played. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a month's time or so. John, how is Thursday night going to go? Will Newcastle pick up all 3 points against Everton?
Yes, I think they will. I've got to say that because it's my belief. I mean, on ability, man for man, and I'm talking about the team will have it out, not the ones that aren't available. The team will have out from man for man. We are a different class to them. So by all things that are saying, and nothing is saying now because people get injured and even your keeper goes off with a dislocated shoulder. It's ludicrous. But all things being said, Newcastle United have got much more than Everton's got. We've got a right or wrong, and our away record in the Premier League is poor. That has got to be righted. And this is a greater opportunity than Spurs, in my humble opinion. Although there's an opportunity for both. We shouldn't be scared of Spurs. But I'm taking us to win. I think it mightn't be pretty, the match, but I don't care. I'm not bothered about being pretty. I'm bothered about the 3 points. And yes, I think we'll win a match which will be more ugly than pretty, but the 3 points will be pretty. And that's what we need. And I think we'll just manage to get them.
Do you know what? I've been really confident over the last few weeks, and I've been right in my predictions, Chelsea, Manchester United. But I think it's going to be a draw on Thursday. I just think the tiredness might catch up with them, and it's going to be a difficult game. I think it's going to be a draw.
Well,
But you don't lose, and
no,
that's something.
that's the biggest thing. The thing we cannot do under any circumstances is lose at Everton and lose at Spurs. Because it's away, and then we have got trouble. It could easily be a draw. I'm expecting and wanting more than a draw, and I think if Lady Luck decides to smile on us, or at least not play a hand against us, which is what's been happening recently, we'll be okay. And as I say, as for the tiredness, we've had a little bit of extra leeway this week with the game being Thursday and not Wednesday. And I think the problem with tiredness or whatever, if it's going to come, might well come at Tottenham. But we'll deal with that when it comes along, game at a time, as Eddie would say. And I'm taking us to squeeze the 3 points.
Well, hopefully your prediction is right. John, thank you as always for popping on to the Everything is Black and White podcast. This has been the match preview. Please please follow, share the podcast among your Newcastle United supporting friends and family, and head over to chroniclelive.co.uk for the latest Newcastle United.